even live in.
I was astonished at the degree to which solid materials were turned into pulverized dust as a consequence of that building collapse. I think it was striking.
The Environmental Protection Agency has been sampling the dust, and one specialist told ABC they believe the clouds that appeared immediately after the collapse were mostly gypsum dust from drywall, cement dust, and plaster, which can cause problems.
Cement dust is an irritant. Fine glass powder is also an irritating material.
The EPA did find spotty levels of asbestos. A sample on a police car turned out dangerous. Another sample a couple of blocks away, not dangerous. But most interesting, in the mix, they think, at specks of steel that used to be beams and elevators, marble from the lobby floor and facings. So what were once the strongest architectural elements in the two towers were pulverized, large portions turned into clouds like this one. Still, there is this mystery. If some of the hardest materials were vaporized, how to account for the presence everywhere of paper, fully intact letters, business forms, stationery. Paper is so fragile and combustible, and yet somehow, maybe because we have so much of it, it was everywhere. Robert Krulwich, ABC News, New York.
A fascinating look, and always, Robert Krulwich always gives a different and interesting perspective of stories that we have looked at now for days. This has been, in so many respects, a tale of two cities. We have focused primarily on New York, but John Donovan, my Nightline colleague, is standing by in Washington. I wonder if you can give me your thoughts, John, on just the qualitative difference in the feelings that people seem to have in Washington about what has happened down there at the Pentagon relative to what we've seen coming out of New York over these last couple of days.
Well, I actually have kind of a personal feeling about that because I'm a native New Yorker and lived very close to the neighborhood where everything has happened, and in a way feel almost a sense of guilt that I'm not in New York City and I'm in Washington, because the whole thing, as horrible as it has been here, has not as been paralyzing to the life of the city. The Pentagon is actually across the Potomac River, and life in downtown Washington is continuing with some normalcy. At the same time, people here, particularly on Tuesday, had a sense that there are so many potential targets, there are so many potential symbols: the Capitol, the Washington Monument over my shoulder, the White House just beneath that, which apparently was going to be a target. And I remember on Tuesday, first thing I did was I went to pick up my son at school, thinking maybe I was a little foolish and overreacting, and found all of the parents who had children in that school were rushing up the hill to pull their kids out. And it was because there was a feeling that you didn't know if there was any place in the city that was safe. And I would say that although tonight it is quiet, you could hear a pin drop outside the window behind me, there is a real sense of unease that if it happens again, where in Washington would they try it again? We're a couple of blocks away where I'm standing from the White House, and earlier we were taking a look out our window. We could actually see the snipers who are always stationed on the White House roof, and they were, you can see by their body language as the shot moves in, that they were rather relaxed. They're not particularly tense. And yet, if we had been speaking maybe an hour ago, there were helicopters circling the area with searchlights looking in the park around the White House, and at that time there was a real feeling of tension. Did they know something that we didn't know? So it's different from New York in the sense that it's quieter. It's like a baseball game versus a football game. There's a sense that something might happen. There might be tension, as opposed to this constant drumbeat and constant sense of disaster. And so that's how I would sum up the difference between these two things. A feeling here that maybe we escaped the absolute paralysis that New York City is going through, but not a feeling that necessarily we're free of it, we're over it.
And just one notation, and that is that the Vice President tonight is not sleeping in his house. He's up at Camp David. We have to take a break.